Hello everyone, I am Rue and this is Rue with the Books. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you have a nice refreshing beverage at hand because you're about to get a serving of Rue's Reviews, a nice little treat. I've been making a conscious decision to read a little bit more Stephen King when I can here and there to build up my knowledge over time. So finally, one day, I can start tackling the Dark Tower series. Due to the fact that Stephen King is such a prolific author, having written across more genres than not at this point, it is very, very easy to find Stephen King novels at your local library. While no library is going to have his whole, bibliography, is that what you call it? I guess it is, right? Most libraries do tend to have a good selection. So, yeah, at least mine does. I recently read The Body, which you might know if you watched my last Talking Books episode. And upon my most recent library visit, I decided to pick a copy of Cell by Stephen King. I don't remember quite where I heard about this book, probably some BookTube video, but I do remember being very interested in what I heard about its premise. So, seeing it at my local library, just sitting there on the shelf and collecting dust, I had to put it in my hands and take it along home with me. Before I get onto talking about the book, I want to ask you, my viewer, to click the like button to spread this video like a virus across the algorithm. I'm not viral like a virus, I promise, but your help would be hugely appreciated. If you like books and hang around on BookTube, be sure to press that subscribe button too. I upload once, maybe even twice a week. I can provide you with a cozy place to return to by hanging around in your subscription feed. And with that out of the way, it is time to talk about Cell by Stephen King. I hope you are ready. Cell by Stephen King begins with an event that thrusts the planet into an apocalypse. This event is called the Pulse. Very ominous, right? Phone signals are hijacked, and everyone that is using a phone or picks up a call immediately loses their humanity. They become Stephen King's rendition of a techno-zombie, which is, I guess, a pretty unique premise on its own, because I've not really heard of techno-zombies before. And absolute carnage ensues immediately after the Pulse, and thus begins the story. We follow Clay Riddle, an artist on the cusp of achieving their hopes and dreams of becoming a comic author. His ambitions lead him to Boston, a very, very long way away from his family home and away from his child, because an opportunity to close a deal on a comic series was forthcoming. But at the moment of the Pulse, all of that is thrown out of the window, thrown into shambles, and his priorities change. He yearns to make sure that his child is okay, because art is no longer important in this world, and this hope of closing this comic deal is no longer possible, because, everyone is basically turning into zombies. That's basically what the plot is. Clay, traveling across northeastern America, to try to reunite with his child in an apocalyptic world. Amidst the plot, an interesting mystery unravels about the nature of the zombies. As Clay and companions undergo their journey, they come into contact with zombies and other humans. These situations allow them to observe the zombies, as well as share information about them with other survivors, which leads them to form their own theories and headcanons about the way in which the zombies are acting and their behaviors are changing and transforming. It's a very interesting mystery, and with a large focus on technology, and it feels a bit reminiscent of something like Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. The focus on the mystery element in this book takes priority over practically everything else. So, if you read the first few pages and are really, really intrigued about what is going on with the zombies, you're likely to enjoy the book. If, instead, you're more excited about the character journey, in which a father looks for their son against the odds with a lot of incredibly emotional moments, then this book falls a little bit short on both aspects. There are some interesting story arcs for the various characters and just the progression of what goes on in the book, where each story arc is notably defined by its own part in the book. I guess that makes it easy to follow what is going on and just separates all the different things that happen. The story arc to kick off the book and the one at the academy in the middle of the book were amongst some of my favorites and the most enjoyable ones for me. The plot was fairly weak and there were only a few emotional moments. The ambiguous ending meant that the weak plot and book overall were let down even further, as the climax made the journey we went through over almost 500 pages a tinsy-wincy bit anticlimactic. King did a pretty good job with the characters, in my opinion. They come and go throughout. We meet other survivors, some of which join Clay's merry band, others don't. And throughout the timeline of this book, they can even part ways if their priorities no longer align. Another aspect about the characters that I liked was that humans stayed true to being human. An apocalyptic event doesn't suddenly make everyone be best chums and everything. People make nice gestures, they share knowledge with one another, and then they go about their own separate ways. Or they can act very aggressively towards one another. You know, humans can be pretty angry towards one another at the best and worst times. Humans don't suddenly strengthen their survival instincts. A lot of characters in this book do stupid things, and consequences do actually exist for those silly geese, as one might say. One aspect that I liked about the characters was the inclusion of children and the way that they were handled. Usually, it's a trope that kids know something important, and then adults ignore the children because they know better. It's always incredibly infuriating and is only done to make the reader mad. And I don't like being mad. I like being calm and chill and enjoying my time. The kids that survived and are part of the story in this book are super smart and are taken seriously. In fact, they have some of the biggest roles in the story, and I appreciated that a lot. It works quite well. The main character, Clay, is a true protagonist during the apocalypse. He doesn't abandon his morals for the purposes of survival. He takes risks to do what he deems is the right thing to do. These decisions are very impactful to his survival. Overall, he's a pretty good guy. His paternal instincts come out a lot during the course of the story for the children he meets along the way, and it's very heartwarming. For the most part, the other survivors that travel with Clay also feel like Clay too. Tom, the first one that we encounter at the very start of the book, has practically the same personality and paternal instincts as Clay, despite the fact that he has no children. You can call him compassionate if that is what you wish. There is very little to set the two apart. The children are equally as kind-hearted as Clay and Tom, except they possess additional qualities such as leadership and extreme intelligence. Leadership coming from one of the children rather than the adults was an interesting and nice touch that I quite enjoyed. There are some other survivors that come and, turn up over the course of the story. They have their own quirks and they do play an important role in the overall book. But I don't want to talk about them too much because of spoilers. What I will say is they kind of suffer the same problem as the characters we meet at the start of the book, where they feel quite samey and not too different to one another. But as I said, they do play an important role over the book at least, so they do have something going on. So overall, I thought that the characters were okay. A little bland maybe, and they're just kind of like happy-go-lucky, chummy kind of people. They felt a bit similar to one another, although they did have different strengths, which set them apart just a little bit at least. So I guess there was that. This section is kind of like a miscellaneous one, I guess. It's just going to be full of my ramblings about the book in general. So, the first sequence of events in this book were incredibly action-packed. It set the scene for me that this book was going to be very, very survival horror, very chaotic, very fast paced. After the first few pages, I got absolutely none of that. It felt very misleading, and by the end of it, I was a little disappointed that none of those stakes were really there, none of that action and excitement were really that present. The second thing that I want to touch on is that this book shifts into a mystery gear after the opening section, where the characters try to debunk what is happening with the zombies because their behavior over the course of the book changes. It stems from the fundamental truth that all zombies were using their phones when they turned. So they come up with all these crazy theories based on their knowledge of technology. I feel like a good mystery book incorporates thriller aspects to ramp up the stakes and make it feel more exciting. It kind of like surrounds the mystery with a little bubble of something else to just make it better, right? This book doesn't do much in making it feel more thrilling or adding something else to kind of exaggerate or just improve upon the mystery itself. There are sequences of action where the main characters plot stuff and then execute those plots. There is very little pushback, and it never feels like they could really fail. This does a huge disservice to the mystery because I actually did find it to be really interesting. I mainly feel that the mystery itself couldn't carry a novel by its lonesome, especially over a book that long where it is almost 500 pages. This book also had an ambiguous choose your own ending type ending. In some cases, those types of endings work because it leads the reader to do some deep introspection, some real soul searching. And that works when the contents of the book are kind of deep and heavy. In this case, the novel isn't trying to really convey anything mind-bending or world-shattering to the reader, so the ending didn't work in that regard. It didn't conclude the 480-page investment I made in reading the story, and the climax to the mystery itself didn't feel super satisfying either. So unfortunately, despite me having liked a solid proportion of the novel, the ending just did not hit for me. So, if you watched the Mistborn review, you will know that I am starting a new segment of my reviews called the Cozy Quality Matrix. Click, there it is. So that is the Cozy Quality Matrix for this book. With all of my previous complaints, you should already understand why I put it fairly low in the high quality section. It's not bad enough that I think it warrants being beneath the central points in the low quality section, but it definitely could have done more to get a bit higher up there. What may surprise you is that considering it's a zombie apocalypse horror type book, it's actually in the feel-good side of things. That's because there are a lot of funny shock moments where Stephen King just writes the things that Stephen King typically writes about human bodies. There are also a lot of funny banter moments between Tom and Clay, and everyone tries to keep it somewhat light when they can because otherwise it's too depressing of a situation where they're in. So I appreciated the jokes and humor that the characters tried to add to the story and their situation to just keep it fun. This book is not a cozy horror or a cozy murder mystery or anything, but Stephen King did add elements to his writing that edged it towards the feel-good side. I appreciated that. I'm someone that enjoys a bit of humor and lightheartedness in books, and maybe that's a reason why it also felt like it warrants me calling it at least an average book rather than bad. To conclude my opinions on Cell by Stephen King, I want to say the following. This book kicks off with an absolutely awesome intro in which everything is just thrown right into chaos. It It sets off an expectation for me that I should expect a lot of action and chaos going forward, but that wasn't the case, and I was disappointed by that. Rather than an action survival apocalypse horror novel, we get a mystery book based on tech zombies. It is actually kind of interesting that in 2025, there has been a resurgence on this topic based on all the 5G tower conspiracy theories. But anyway, I enjoyed the mystery elements in this book, but I don't feel there was enough kind of cushioning the mystery itself to be for it to have been done really well. I think it was just missing a little something that could have made this book truly great. There are some interesting supernatural elements in this book that I enjoyed, although I don't actually know if supernatural is really the right word to use for them, but let's just go with it. And they add a nice twist to the things that are going on. I feel like King could have capitalized on them a little bit more, once again, to really, really make it exciting. My main complaint about the characters were that they were a bit too similar to one another, but they did have various strengths, which was a positive. I enjoyed that the younger characters in this book carried the torch, rather than being stupid, ignored by adults, or just absolutely helpless. My cozy quality matrix says that it's a little bit in the high quality section and a little bit in the feel good section. So it's not bad, but there definitely could have been some improvements. Maybe an editor could have been just a little bit stern with Mr. King. I also feel that the pacing throughout this book could have been better. Overall, I enjoyed this book and I'm happy to give it 3 stars. I might not have loved this book, but I definitely didn't hate it. And I'm definitely also happy that I'm getting a bit more Stephen King under my belt. In my top 10 series I need to read video, Dark Tower was at the bottom of the barrel because I wanted to study more of King's works before I made the plunge into Dark Tower. I'm definitely not there yet, but I'm making progress towards it, and that feels good. If you have read this book, what did you think? Do you agree with me or completely disagree? Based on Goodreads reviews, a lot of people seem to love this book or hate it. I'm somewhere in the middle of the two where I enjoyed it, but I have quite a lot of criticisms against it as well. As always, please throw a like and subscribe if you would like to see more reviews, book wrap-ups, and TBR reveals. I would love to hear what you're currently reading, so please let me know that in the comments below. Anyway, until next time, Rue out.